Succession has been the best character drama on TV for several years now. The story of an abusive billionaire coercing his children to compete against one another for the chance to become the heir to his throne has always had a Shakespearean feel to it. But when a story is this captivating, with layered character writing, complex power dynamics, and sharp lines of dialogue, we can sometimes forget how easily it could all fall apart with bad casting. If just one actor felt out of place, it would undermine the impact of the series. And there was no more important role to cast correctly than Logan Roy. As if the audience couldn't feel the same toxic combination of fear, admiration, and resentment for the man as the rest of the characters do, then the trickle-down effect he has on his subordinates wouldn't feel so authentic. Logan's power looms over each scene, even when he isn't present, and that's because this performance leaves such a lasting impression. Brian Cox has had a highly successful and prolific career in theatre, film, and TV, stating that there are no big or small parts, that there are only short or long parts, and that belief shines through in his performances, no matter how minor. For decades, he would pop up in mostly supporting roles in a wide variety of genres, whether it be The Bourne Identity, Adaptation, Troy, Braveheart, The Ring, even being the first actor to be cast as Hannibal Lecter in Michael Mann's Manhunter.
Emotional problems, I hear. Do you have any problems, Will?
But it was in 2018, at the age of 72, that he would be cast in perhaps his most iconic role in HBO's Succession, earning him his first Golden Globe. So let's take a deeper look at this performance to understand what makes it so memorable. For me, there are three keys that really make Brian Cox's casting so essential. The first is his background in Shakespeare, having starred in King Lear, The Taming of the Shrew, and Titus Andronicus, which earned him his second Olivier. This honed ability to rattle off Shakespearean monologues in perfect rhythm clearly influences how he delivers Logan's colourful rants.
Let me go grind their bones to powder small, and with this hateful liquor temper it, and in that paste tin pot ports registered in bongo hovels, and we poured millions, and then sure, did we play rough with the odd union boss or some moaning mini repeat litigant?
If you take a step back, the mechanics of Succession are not unlike a stage play. It's all just characters in a room talking. Sometimes the door is open and anyone can walk in, and other times it's behind closed doors for a private conversation that no one else can know about. So having someone who knows how to command a stage is vitally important, as due to Logan Roy's power, whether he's speaking or silent, he's always the focal point of every scene. Any decision the other characters have made or want to make must go through him. Brian makes his presence felt, either by pacing the room while the other characters are steady, or sitting still, being the calm, calculating centre of the storm, while the rest of the characters actively compete for his attention. But while film is a much more intimate, subtle medium, Cox's experience allows him to switch from silent close-up shots to shouting so loud that his voice reverberates around the bleachers.
Inhuman. Traitors! Lunch!
He brings the energy of a mad Shakespearean king to our TV screens. It's a powerful, combative performance, filled with pounding fists and slamming things. Even chewing a burger or biting an apple is done with venom. Just take this scene as an example. Now, this is the type of dynamic we've seen play out in multiple stories. A character chases after a car, yelling at them to stop. But Brian brings a vicious level of entitlement to it.
We haven't finished! We haven't finished! Do you hear me? We haven't Hey! Stop! Stop! Stop!
This moment alone tells us so much about how he rules his roost, through sheer brute force. But in this rare case, he has no power over the other person. So all of his yelling just looks like an unhinged megalomaniac. Or in what remains one of my favourite scenes, where Logan wants to sniff out and punish any insubordination, Brian gives a masterclass in how to play high status. He's always willing to go big, like he's retching the words out from the bottom of his soul.
I will win!
He lands the line like it's an act break in a play, But closing a scene like this, with such a dark delivery, is how Brian makes his presence echo through every scene afterwards. We remember the feeling of these words, just like the characters do. This naturally brings us into the second key, his voice.
Well, the thing is always asked, said to me, how do you learn all those lines? That isn't the problem, madam. It's how to say them is the problem, not how to learn them.
This is actually what makes Brian Cox one of my favourite actors, as no one else sounds quite like him. He's done a lot of voiceover work throughout the years, and you really can tell, as even without the visual, his performance is visceral. It's not just in how he screams or in his now famous catchphrase, it's the quieter moments that sometimes speak the loudest. Take this scene as an example. No shouting, just two characters sitting down talking. Kendall, played by Jeremy Strong, wants to adopt the moral high ground as he concedes defeat, showcasing his integrity. So Brian plays the opposite, dark, ominous, and purposely wicked.
Life's not knights on horseback. It's a number on a piece of paper. It's a fight for a knife in the mud.
The texture of Brian's voice is deep and raspy. The words calmly croak out of his throat like they're burnt to a crisp.
It's a fight for a knife in the mud.
The line is viciously cynical and adversarial, but no matter how brilliant any line of dialogue is, if it's delivered the wrong way, it loses its impact. Whereas Brian embodies its meaning to unlock its full potential. He's not animated or lighting up to make his point. Instead, he's subdued and eerily settled into this ugly position, as if he's haggard with so much real-life experience that it's chipped away at his soul and caused him to rot from the inside. The harshness of each word makes him look even more sinister, as if it's coming out of Darth Sidious's mouth. Even the little details, such as how he breathes, make such a difference to how we process each word. Like here, listen to Brian's breathing and how it creates a sort of hissing sound, as if he's seducing you back to the dark side, like the devil incarnate.
You're my boy. You're my number one boy.
Because Cox chooses to play Logan like such a snarling beast, you can substitute his voice in for other evil creatures from famous stories, and it doesn't even feel out of place.
Life's not knights on horseback. You're my number one boy. You have to be a killer.
If we just think about the vast vocal range Brian brings to the table, we can see why the character feels so complete. It's never just one note. He can be bringing you closer while pushing you away in the same scene. He could be shouting like the Mad King, or seeming genuinely warm and charming at times. Other times he's hissing like he might breathe fire at any moment, and then in public he transforms into a charismatic professional. But then behind closed doors he's an entertaining, degrading insults merchant. All of this shines through not just how he physically carries himself, but his vocal tone and inflections, so you could effectively listen to the show as an audiobook and still come away with a complete picture. The final key is eye contact. For any screen actor, however much or little eye contact they give their co-stars is going to have a large impact on how the story feels for the audience. As without realizing it, we always naturally hone in on the eyes. We look where they look. For Logan Roy, he's often quite selective. He doesn't just give everyone eye contact to make them feel seen. Instead, he just occasionally donates some. This demonstrates that Brian is well versed at playing high status, as you'll notice the other characters are usually looking at him, but he's not returning the favor. He's either briefly looking at the few people in the room he does respect, or out the window, or at the TV. Meaningful eye contact is something that has to be earned. Instead, Brian is showing his own reactions to what he's hearing, often disgusted or disinterested in what they're saying. But something I've noticed is that Brian tends to blink a lot as he's listening, as if he's coming to terms with the information as he processes it. For example, when Roman and Shiv tell him they're not on board for Marcia gaining an extra vote if Logan passes away, as each feeling of disgust stirs inside him, he blinks and looks away. Or as Kendall tries to kick him out of his position with a vote of no confidence, notice how Brian's eyelids are communicating, as if each word is a punch to the gut he's reacting to.
Closer to destroying his own legacy. He took on levels of debt that threatened the very existence of our firm.
Now you might think maybe he just naturally blinks a lot and this is unintentional. But by contrast, his decision to not blink when he holds eye contact most certainly isn't. When he's just one-on-one with a character, especially someone he wants to bully or manipulate, he locks his eyes onto theirs and doesn't blink at all, like he's pulling them into his vortex. One of the best examples of this is in the very first episode, when Kendall confronts his father about not stepping down. The two lock eyes with one another, and when Logan sees his son has his fist clenched, he steps forward for a closer look. And just notice Cox's pupils as he searches in his eyes. They're bouncing back and forth like a game of ping pong, demonstrating he's high energy and welcoming conflict. Contrast that with Jeremy Strong, who plays it frozen scared and defensive. So he just looks at one eye, and then the other, then blinks slowly to show he's folding his hand, and swallows the lump in his throat as he cowers. Now it could just be left there, but instead, Logan continues to intimidate his son with more relentless eye contact, staring him down like a predator until he emotionally breaks him. We see this similar pattern again when Logan has the family confront Kendall at Shiv's wedding. And as he berates his son and reminds him that he's nothing without him, Brian takes a step closer and stops blinking as he delivers his lines. The reason this hits harder is that it makes the target of his abuse feel like what he's saying is the unfiltered truth, as there's no flinching or uncertainty, it's just a harsh dose of reality flowing straight out of him. But behind this cold front, Brian does give us glimpses into Logan's humanity. Like in Season 3, when he has to reassure an investor that he and Kendall are on good enough terms to continue. The dialogue informs us of Logan's feelings, saying that Kendall is a good kid, that he loves him, and maybe he will actually take over one day, as it's in his blood. But words don't mean much in Succession. They're often used to manipulate or misdirect. But after he removes his sunglasses, when they're left alone together, it's through the deafening silence that Brian lets the audience know that he actually meant every word. This moment reveals that it's actually through not making eye contact that we discover the real truth, as by not being able to look at Kendall, it exposes that Logan feels naked and ashamed. And in order to communicate that his heart is breaking, his eyes go from subtly coming to terms with what he just said up here, to hanging his head down, as if he's looking at where it hurts in his chest. And that final expression really highlights how devastated he is. A portrait of a broken man that can't stop hurting those closest to him. Brian Cox began his acting career at just 14 years old, commendably working his way up the ranks over many decades.
You know, acting's only part of a process as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's complete for me because it is vocational. It's like the priesthood. And I have no shame in that. I'm not ashamed to say that. I believe in it.
And I find it especially satisfying to see him finally getting all of this overdue appreciation in the later stages of his career. Because although Shakespeare and theatre is all about different actors replacing one another in the same role as the play lives on decade after decade, through his portrayal of Logan Roy, Brian Cox very naturally summons all of the skills that he's picked up over a lifetime of hard work, and made this one performance of his truly irreplaceable. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching. But if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing. And if you want to support the channel personally, you can check out my Patreon.